Equanimity. How is equanimity the force that frees you, the force that unbinds us? This will be our topic today, and equanimity is a crucial key when it comes to the practice of destroying or defabricating the pillars of identity, which is really what's going to hold us back on the path. So, why is the mind bound? And what is the mind bound to? How does this mechanism work? Right? This is very, very important. When the perception, when mind and perception commingle, the mind touches something. And what it touches, this can be anything, any of the sense gates, anything from the internal environment through the external environment. When the mind touches any of this, there's some interesting things that happen. The something that the mind touches first is infused with the energy of the mind, right? We mentioned very regularly on this channel that what the mind touches grows. The attention infuses the object of attention with energy, which is why what we pay attention to is so important. Why we might choose to pay attention to higher vibrational objects of awareness as opposed to our lowest. This is why we might do that. So what the mind touches grows, which means that there's a connection there, there's a cohesion there. And because of that, there's a static that can build there in the absence of equanimity. This takes place through the mental matrix. The perception and mind, as we said, commingling, these work through the mental matrix, and then through that bridge will start to connect with the astral body. And the astral body and all of the energetic and emotional substance through those layers will start to bind to the idea, bind to the perception itself. And this starts to create a feedback loop where the astral body's desires and the identity to feed itself, right? The identity is always looking to feed itself at whatever layer of density it's stuck at. So the identity attempts to feed itself through these loops. And this feedback loop that's created, it generates all kinds of stories and illusion. These stories and illusion then get attached to by that identity, right? By those desires of the identity to continue to live. And the mind itself gets energized by that and supported by that, and the foundation is built, and the congealed life substance of that story, of that illusion, is now perpetuated. And this is done through the bridge of the mental matrix. So once we understand this, we can begin to look at how we might get in the way of this process unfolding, this process of identity, of attachment, of cohesion, of illusion, of storytelling. And from the inside, what's very interesting is from the inside, these stories, the story of identity, and there's many layers to the story of identity. It's not just one phase, then you're done. From the inside, this prison appears to be the whole world. It appears to be everything. It's very much like the Truman Show, if you've ever seen that, where the man is living in basically a TV show, and he's the only one that doesn't know it. And this is what it feels like when you are able to break free of that. It's like Truman looking behind the, the third wall there, fourth wall, where he breaks through into the meta of that show and actually leaves the set, never realizing that he'd been on the set his whole life. Suddenly he can leave. This is what it's like. We're in this prison of these illusions, of these stories of identity. And we need to find a way to begin to soften out of these. So the first step, or a good first step, is the practice of stillness, the practice of equanimity. Why? Well, stillness creates a reference point. And that reference point, ideally, is a point that is more still than the movement of the prison of the illusion of the story. The story is a series of actions that are taking place. And the reason it seems true is that our level of stillness is being carried by those actions. Our identity is floating along, we might say, in the center of those actions. So if this is the movement of the actions of the story taking place, our identity is doing this, right? Identity, actions, whoop. So it seems like that is everything, right? But what happens when the still point becomes more still than the movement of the actions taking place? We can start to recognize that we are not this, right? The identity is not the movement of the patterns that are carrying themselves out. This recognition can allow us to start to free ourselves from the mental matrix that is binding the astral identity and emotions that desire to continue and perpetuate. It can help to unbind that. So stillness is very, very important. And what will happen is we will find ourselves constantly falling through deeper layers of stillness, only to uncover deeper layers of static that were the puppeteers of our existence at more and more profound layers of refinement. So this is a process of freedom. Right? Once we can see the illusion for what it is, see the story for what it is, see the mutability, the impermanence of the story as it unfolds and as it perpetuates itself, we start to realize how we are actually the ones that are feeding that continuum with our own energy, with our own substance of mind, of emotion, of body. This awareness allows us to start to unwind all of these tendrils of identity. How could we say this? The identity, once it recognizes this series of patterns carrying themselves out, it can start to recognize the mental patterns that are carrying themselves out and cohesions as the life substance of these forms exists and perpetuates on the mental, in the mental body, in the astral body, and in the physical body. And these habits of movement comprise the whole illusion of the story, which is why stillness is so important. Now, often stillness and movement get confused because, or depending on what paradigm or viewpoint one is navigating these from. From the highest viewpoint, we might say, from the ultimate viewpoint, it is, infinity is stillness. However, from the perspective of phenomena, infinity is constant and forever infinite and eternal changeability and impermanence. All of that impermanence resolves into that which is infinite, truly infinite, that which is the true luminous emptiness underneath everything, that infuses everything, that everything resolves into and springs out of. From that layer of perspective, everything is still. You are at that point the source of all resolution. From the other perspectives, everything is change, everything is motion, everything is movement. So we need to recognize from what layer we are perceiving from. At the layer of everything is movement, that is where the stories appear like stagnations, blockages, tensions that we're holding onto, stagnancies. Those stagnancies are, however, actions. We're engaging in the motion of holding, we might say. So this is a conundrum that many practitioners find themselves contemplating. And we want to be open-minded enough that we are not locking ourselves into a particular perspective. Okay, so agree or disagree becomes irrelevant. You simply practice with an open heart and an open mind and allow things to unfold. You don't stake your identity into anything. This allows everything to be in a constant state of evolution. And you can find and perceive that stillness, that profound emptiness from those deep, deep layers and levels of Akashic consciousness throughout all this. So the next aspect of equanimity is the recognition that all spiritual skills of the Hermetic path, they already exist within us and within the higher light bodies, we might say. The skills are already there, all the skills you might want of the spiritual path. Now, if they're already there or already here, why don't we have them? Well, this is because of the static of the cohesive nature of the identity binding mind, binding perception into these dense, small layers of reality. We need to unbind. And we unbind, once again, through equanimity, through stillness. This is what allows us to touch these more refined light bodies. And once we touch that refinement from within those layers of freedom, that's where the skills start to arise spontaneously. Instead of seeking the skill through condensed, narrow-minded practice, trying to force the skill into being, which is where many issues and kind of damages can occur, injuries can occur to oneself and to the environment around. Instead of working through such a narrow-minded frame of, I'm going to make this skill happen, you touch into that liberative space, that liberative freedom. And from within the space of that light, whatever refinement of light body you might be touching into at that time, the skills of that light body are open to us and then can flow through us and flow through our work. And this is really, really important. What keeps us from that freedom, from those light bodies, is, well, stagnancy, is density, is the cohesive contraction of the identity latching on to the need for continued meaning based off the lowest desires of the unresolved black and white mirror work that we've yet to do. Which is why soul mirror work is so important, yet can't be attached to, because that will hold us back as well. So spiritual skills, they will arise based off that refinement of work that one is doing. What allows us to touch into those higher light bodies is, of course, deepening the equanimity. What allows for a deepening of the equanimous substance, the equanimity substance, is recognizing that stillness and equanimity in every exercise that we do, and not only in the exercises of the path, but in the day-to-day life, all the scenarios we're working through. If we are working from a place of equanimity, as you encounter any situation, because you're working from a place of equanimity, the elements are observed. You can acknowledge, observe might be the wrong word, because it's not necessarily a separation. It's a union with the energies of the present of reality. So the elements, because we're not attached to it, we're not stuck on it, the identity is not stuck within it, they're allowed to move. They're allowed to be Truman breaking free and actually living his real life that's not imposed on him. It's not an indoctrinated story that the environment has created for him. So because the elements can move, then you can recognize the flow of the elements as they're stimulated into being and into action through day-to-day activity. And this way, in this way, you begin to live elementally, live at the essence of the movement of the elements, and they're only able to move freely in that essence and arise spontaneously from that essence and dance from that essence if we are equanimous from the identity of being submerged and stuck within particular meaning. Because as soon as that identity makes its mark, places its stamp down, it inhibits the movement of the energy and of the elements. So this is the same thing that is the essence level of realization, right? What keeps us from the essence level of realization is that static. It is the clinging of perception, the clinging of perception to the light of perception. As soon as the clinging or the identity reinvigorates the light of perception, then it starts a feedback loop based on the perceived, based on the phenomena, instead of all perception being recognized, the light of all perception being recognized from its source of emptiness, from its Akashic base, and from the, through that, the equanimous recognition and understanding. So this is really, really important. It's the static and the clinging. We have a perception, then we cling to that. As soon as that perception is clung to, and then the loop starts happening, then boom, we're off. But if the light of perception can be acknowledged from the place of equanimity, now we don't have that spin-off, and the light of perception is seen for the magic that it is, instead of invigorated and sustained as a story. So the equanimity is, it's kind of like the ultimate transit system or transportation system to essence and to the light bodies and through the light bodies, because nothing is getting stuck, right? It's not like you're stopping everywhere and getting stuck on all this identity and astral cohesiveness. This is really important now, this next thing. Only through the playful, equanimous, open-hearted, diligent practice can we move through this. Is all this recognized naturally? This is really important. It has to be recognized naturally. Even though the spiritual practice can be and is the most serious aspect of one's life, it's also the most free and playful aspect of one's life. If the spiritual practice is serious, you're literally holding yourself back. You're literally creating these dense blockages that are going to limit the refinement of the light bodies that one can touch into, and from there, off we go. So the playfulness, the joyfulness, the freedom that one brings to the practice is truly very, very, very crucial to further refinement and evolution. So ultimately, while one engages in very diligent practice, you have to try easy, right? We can't try hard. We have to try easy. This way we can avoid the tendency for the practice itself to be the place where the identity puts its chokehold on our evolution and on our spiritual growth. Okay, so we try easy. And this is a wonderful doorway into that equanimous relationship with practice itself. So if we have an equanimous relationship with practice and with the path and evolution and with exercises in life, of course, how does an unequanimous relationship with the practices and with life unfold? And this is something that we need to look at as well, because it's going to be the wall that we end up running into. Okay, I think that's it for today. I hope you enjoyed this, and for training, please check out the website. There are online courses and also retreats information that you can find there, so please check that out. And I'll see you on the next one. Hope you're enjoying these. Have fun, practice. Bye.